welcome to each of you. I look forward to an enlightening session. Thank you all.
Now let me welcome Dr. Shri Priya Shaji for introducing our speakers of the day.
Thank you so much, Asya. I'm very much honored to introduce the speakers of the day, and especially uh, our main speaker is our speaker is Dr. Dharini Krishnan, PhD RD, who is a leading consultant dietitian, has always left a lasting impression. I honestly, I still remember the day one I saw her in WCC college for a session. A thin, fragile lady, much resembling our MS Subbulakshmi, walking very gracefully in a very well draped cotton saree. I still remember the moment she began speaking. It was very much captivating to all of us, and it was firm and content-rich and wonderful, extraordinary talk. Her wealth of knowledge and passion for nutrition has been truly inspiring ever since. As a former chairperson of the Registered Dietitian Board and the past national president of Indian Dietetic Association, Dr. Dharini ma'am has been a guiding light in the nutrition community. Her groundbreaking research and innovative tools in NutriTracks has revolutionized how we approach diet and health. Her inspirational works continues through her latest initiative, Dharini Krishnan's Easy Diet on YouTube. We can see that every time making healthy eating accessible to all. That is her, I think, since the very beginning, she is very focused on that, healthy eating to all, which is accessible also. And I'm also honored to welcome Dr. Dharini ma'am's daughter, Dr. Madhumitha Krishnan, who is a capable Ayurvedic pediatrician, integrated traditional Ayurvedic principles with modern pediatric care, with an MD in Kaumara Bridya, Ayurvedic Pediatrics. From Rajiv Gandhi University, Dr. Madhumitha brings her vast expertise to research and treatment for children's health. Her roles as a consultant at several clinics and as an assistant professor in Ayurveda demonstrates her dedication to the enhancing pediatric care through Ayurveda. Notably, her work in integrative dietetics alongside Dharini ma'am exemplifies the potential of combining modern and traditional approach for the holistic health solutions. We are privileged to learn from their expertise today. Actually, their biodata is very big and there are so many things to be spoken of, but ma'am has told me to make it very short. So I'm honored to welcome you both and introduce you both to the, definitely both of you are already well-known people in this fraternity. Still welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And extremely honored to be here. And I'm so happy you are ready to accept this integration of dietetics, which we have been doing. And actually, I think Madhumitha is doing many moves on this area. And we always do together so that we understand the modern dietetics and Ayurveda and how to integrate. So it's an amazing thing today when we talk about AI and chat GPT, computers which we integrate, but we should also integrate our traditional medicine in India. And being part of Kerala, you are the king of Ayurveda, and you can do a lot more with this thoughts that we are going to leave. Can we move to the next slide, please? So I'll start off by defining dietetics, which all of us know is the science or art of science, because there's so much of science. We are the only every one of them and much more at NSC level. So it's a very scientific forum. Why I'm saying this is so there are so many people who call themselves as social nutrition who have not even done a certificate course or maybe just a certificate. And why it's an art? Because we need to align the different types of diet in India into the science and fit it into which client and how they need to take. Over to you.
Thank you again for the warm welcome and looking forward to our session together. So moving on to understanding So we saw that dietetics is defined in the following manner. So here we are talking about perspectives. So Dr. Dharini is going to bring the nutritional and dietetic aspect of it, and I'm going to look at the individual, the food, etc. in the Ayurveda perspective. So to combine these knowledges, we are going to come to the understanding whether it is possible or not. So let me just define the term Ayurveda itself. I think all of you, it is a very inherent in your knowledge, which is amazing. And when I say Ayurveda, it is translated to the science of life because it is a combination of two words which we call as Ayu and Veda. When we say Ayu, it is not restricted to life. It actually means longevity, the ability for a person to lead a long, healthy life. And the Veda or the knowledge system, which gives you those tools, that is what is translated to as Ayurveda. And it is a science of life, not restricted to the textbooks, but how we utilize it and are able to adapt it on a daily basis. So this is defined in the following manner. This is a translation of a shloka which is given in her Samhitas. So it says it is the knowledge that enables physicians, because nowadays it's mostly physicians who are trying to utilize this knowledge to observe, classify, analyze what we call as dynamic causes and effects in biological processes, and to the extent feasible, modulate health and disease. Now, this is just a bunch of words which has been put together, and I'm sure all of you may be wondering, what exactly does this mean? So I'm going to break that down for you with an example to understand what exactly we mean by this. When we say we are observing biological processes and changes in them, usually when we look at the human body and we're trying to understand it, I think many of you would know, at least in the present day, everybody is aware about blood glucose levels and blood pressure, as well as creatinine levels, etc., which are one way in which we describe the human body based on their systems. While in Ayurveda, we look at more a symptomatic approach towards the individual. So to give you an example, let's say someone comes with a headache, right? So we are going to try to understand why is it that the person has this headache. So once the person comes with this symptom, there are over 5,000 of these symptoms and various presentations, of course, which can be as simple as, yes, I have a headache, all the way to I'm vomiting. So obviously something is severely wrong, right? So when a person presents with a specific symptom, immediately we're going to try to understand how exactly that symptom came up. And that's how we classify that observation at multiple levels. As I mentioned, usually if we were trying to understand why we have a headache, we'll first think, did we sleep properly last night? Did I eat something which did not suit me? Is it because I, ate very late in the morning and I'm feeling hungry? Or is it because there is a change in my hormonal balances which is causing that, etc.? So this kind of language, of course, is not used in Ayurveda. Instead, the primary methodology through which we try to understand the changes in the body are through what we call the three doshas, or the primarily physiological functions within our body. At another level at which we classify are the tissues, of course, or what we call as the dhatus. Is it due to a person having anemia, let's say, or is it because a person is dehydrated? All of these can lead to headaches, right? So similarly, in our language, we consider that as the rasa dhatu or the rakta dhatu and so on. Similarly, Agni, the metabolic function. Is it because I ate too much food or I didn't eat at all that it resulted in that? Malas, is it because I'm constipated that probably this resulted? Indriyas, is it because I listened to very loud music and I was looking at a paper very, very late at night and therefore that affected my sleep? Or Manas, because I'm stressed because I have a deadline, etc. So we classify the causes of the symptoms in this manner and we analyze it to understand what exactly resulted in that symptom in the individual. And this is exactly what we call as Karya Karana. So the effect which we're seeing here is the headache or the indigestion or a stomach upset. And we're trying to understand the various causes which have led up to that. And obviously, when we're trying to balance it out, we're going to modulate the health and disease in the sense that if a person has, due to lack of sleep, you're not going to give them a medication for pain. You're going to tell them, why don't you go to sleep? And you're going to feel better. If the cause is because the person has not eaten properly, you'll give them the right kinds of food and the person is going to get sorted, right? So this methodology of approach, that once we understand what is wrong and the approach for that, is how we modulate health as well as disease. Now, where exactly did Ayurveda come from? Right? This is also an interesting practice. We all know it is 5,000 years old. It is a traditional medicine. It is a traditional science, etc. But we are only, I would say, 1 or 2% of the population. Okay, a little more than that. Maybe 50% of the population who carries the knowledge of Ayurveda. But there is a very rich knowledge, traditional knowledge, which is very inherent to the generational familial practices which are there. What I mean by that is, many of us, the minute we get like a cold or something, we'll be like, oh, my grandmother used to tell me this, and I started using that and I had an excellent result. Right? So the carriers of Ayurveda are not only physicians, they are also ordinary village households, tribal communities who are looking around them, learning from the environment in which they are, and utilizing that knowledge to have some positive benefit on their life. And both of these, that Prakrit, traditional knowledge, which is carried down by word of mouth from generation to generation, and also the medical science, which we study as a course, which are recorded in our manuscripts, both of these augment each other. And there are more than 100 metals as well as minerals and over 300 animal products. There are an estimated 1 lakh medical manuscripts which work on different subjects such as medicine, surgery, pharmacology, pharmacy, and we use about 2,50,000 herbal formulations for different conditions. So why are we talking about integration? Why are we doing this at all? We have been doing it for some time, and obviously we are finding some benefit out of it, right? So the reason for that is there was a series of studies which were done. This was about in 2015, almost a decade ago, and they were trying to understand health-seeking behavior of people. And they found that already 40 to 70% of the global population exercises pluralistic choices. What do I mean by that? Let's say a person has a cold and cough, right? So the first thing which they're going to do is go to their kitchen and maybe make a tea with ginger, add a little lemon, etc., or maybe a little honey, which their grandmother would have told them. Then if it's not sorting with that, they'll probably go to their general practitioner and be like, hey, this is not helping me, can you give something else? They'll also have a homeopathic or an Ayurveda or a Siddha medicine which they're also following. So this concept for where in one aspect you're looking for multiple answers tells you that no single system of medicine can claim to have optimum solutions for all healthcare needs. Even in Ayurveda, I can say that for emergency treatment, we may not be the first choice. We're very good at certain things. We're not very good at certain things. But combination, the trends suggest that when we combine the systemic as well as molecular approaches, it is definitely the emerging future of healthcare. And in COVID as well as now, we see that future happening. We see that people are trying to integrate and bring the sciences together to help people in a better form, right? So when we talk about healthcare, food is very, very inherent. And I think nowadays we all know food, let food be thy medicine is like a chant which all of us want to follow. If you tell a person, take this whole stack of medicines, they'll be like, isn't there anything I can do home-based? So the minute you tell them you can take food or something from home, they're willing to try anything, even if it's the bitterest decoction in the world, right? So definitely diet is very, very important. And with that, I give it back to Dr. Dharini to talk about why integration and what exactly it could mean.
basically provides seamless care. As Madhu already mentioned, it is that one science tells you something and another science tells you this. Then things together, you have a solution finally. And coordinated care for patients and their families. And this we saw that specifically, I have been in the space for almost 40 years next year. And there were certain patients where I could not, and we started integrating. We found the help was far better for them when we tried to do things according to their body type and change their diet. I would make a first, we'll do the analysis of Prakriti by giving a questionnaire if it's offline. Otherwise, she would see the patient and then I'll give a diet, and then she would say, these are the things we need to change. The body type, according to the Prakriti, is a little different. So these kind of things started working in many ways, which we'll see as we go further. Next slide, please. So what did it lead to? A higher quality of care. And I think we learned this in the pandemic very, very well, where everybody integrated many things to get out of the situation. Better health outcomes for our patients. Patient transitions to optimum health by integrating two different systems. And this is not new because it's also being done all over the world. And there's a lot of research coming, which we'll keep sharing as we go forward. Over to the next slide. So traditional diet. So what do we do? Well, basically genetic diet. As an Indian, all of us know if you go to any scientific conference, they tell you, as Indians you are doomed. So you get all non-communicable diseases. You are genetically prone to cardiac disease, and we are second for diabetes in the world. In blood pressure, it starts at 18. Triglycerides, people get it even at the age of 50. So these are the pointers to say, let's up. But what did we say before? That ghee is bad, cow's milk is not so good, it's high in fat, coconut oil is bad. This is what the dietetics that I looked with as I started my life. Then they said move to sunflower oil and other new age oils like olive oil, canola oil, palm oil, etc. People started reducing their oil even by seasoning dal or even rasam. They did not have to season it with ghee. So that was the traditional method, but people moved away from it. But now we know what that can do, and things are going on change. Over to the next slide. So what is the new sciences? Ghee is good. Coconut oil is good. Do not use processed oils. Go back to cold press oils. And keto diet says eat a tablespoon of oil. In fact, to my clients, I know when keto diet is done, they give them bottles of coconut oil to drink. So science changes. We are coming back to our roots because our genetic composition with no kind of diet we followed actually helps. So we have enough stuff to tell you about this, and we'll move on, Madhu, to the next slide. So let's take the traditional cooking. You know that about 5-6 years ago, idli was called the best food in the world. People came to the five-star hotels who landed in India time, 2 a.m. They were hungry. They would go and ask, can we have idli? To that level, it became. And how do we do idli? Rice is to black gram dal, 4 portions of rice is to 1 portion of black gram dal. Of course, you can add fenugreek and other things. What does it contain? Carbohydrates, proteins. The missing element of rice is there in dal, and the missing element of dal is there in
VI.
so individually, individually the two rice and dal have incomplete protein, but when we put it together, it becomes a complete protein. Over to Madhu.
So basically, here what we're trying to say is that in the traditional food, which we just spoke about, as in idli, that is following the dietary guidelines of being like a complete complete protein source, and it is really good for the individual as to what one is lacking, the other one is completing. And these were questions which, were considered unhealthy, and something which also came up in my mind when I was growing up. For example, they considered the combination of rice, green gram, and ghee to be the best food in a child, right? When we start annaprashanam or give solid foods to the child for the first time, you would think that they would give something like a kheer or a payasam or something which is extremely tasty. So then you can wonder, right? Why do they give rice, green gram, and ghee? Why not something else which is like filled with sugar, etc.? But here the concept is very, very simple. The first time you're starting something in a child, their digestion is not at its greatest. You need to give something which is light and definitely very suitable to them so that they can digest it well. And all of these components, which is rice, green gram, as well as ghee, have the ability of doing so. And therefore, it is considered Shrestha, or the best kind of diet which you can give in a child. Similarly, they always, when we make rasam, they'll always put ghee in it, and they'll put a little bit of mustard as well as asafoetida. So this was also a question which came up to me as to why rasam, they always put the ghee. The taste, of course, is there, but why so much ghee needs to go into it? And that too, my grandmother, when she used to make the rasam, there used to be a lot of that perungayam or hing, which she used to boil in it as she's making it. And of course, the flavor, the smell, it was just amazing. But there is a reasoning behind this, and we will talk about that in a moment. Because the point is the way in which we make the rasam, there is a lot of spices which goes into it. There is the tur dal, which is there, which many people would probably know that it can cause a little bit of vata imbalance if you have too much of it, which basically presents as distension, a lot of burping, etc. So when you put the asafoetida or the hing, you put the ghee, and you put the mustard, it is something which kind of balances it out, making it a perfect dish. Similarly, when my grandmother used to make Mysore pak, we used to laugh about it, both of us, that, this is more ghee pak, and there is nothing healthy at all about this, because the amount of ghee which goes into making that dish, it'll literally melt in your mouth. Obviously, how can it taste bad? But when I went back into the classical text, I got an answer for this. The reason being that Mysore pak is primarily made with besan, which is the chana dal flour, and that is very, very drying in nature and kind of hot. So when you cook it in ghee, it balances it out perfectly. And finally, one of the other questions which I had was, well, this is one of my favorite combinations, which is basically makhi ki roti and sarson ka saag, which is a combination of mustard leaves with a roti which is made out of corn flour. So whenever I go and ask the Punjabi restaurants, do you have it? In the menu itself, it will be written seasonal. So I used to wonder, why is it seasonal? So that again, I got the answer in the classics, that it is something which is extremely heavy on digestion and hot on digestion, and that is only possible to be digested well during the winter season. So there are so many simple things which we may not relate to, and the answers of that are easily available in Ayurveda. So now we will move on to the next aspect, which is to do with the basics. Over to you.
So how do we calculate? I'm sure all of you are dietitians, you know this. Just to reiterate, just before the differences we talk about, if a person is 5 feet 4 inches, we would say his ideal body weight should be anything 58 to 62. And according to the actual weight, we calculate carbohydrate, basically the calories and protein, and fit in the carbs and fat. And add on, if we can test the body fat, the muscle mass, the BMI, the waist circumference, then we know we need to tweak the fat, we need to tweak the calories if they are on these things, because we know the waist measurement is directly related to the non-communicable diseases, and hence we have to look into it. And of course, diet-wise, we will take a complete diet history of what they are eating, and then we will fit it into that, rather than give them a printed sheet, because they will not follow. Because each state, with each 100 kilometers in India, the diet changes. The way they unlimited changes. So we need to understand that, and that's where the art of dietetics comes. We need to understand and fit the diet into what they are taking. Over to you.
So this is one way in which we look at the individual. The Ayurveda way is slightly different. So if a person is 5'4", you will see that there are three major subtypes of the individual, of presentation, of the build, or how their characteristics are, etc., which we classify as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Just to give you an example of how probably these people may look. So, an individual could be extremely thin, like a bag of skin and bones and nothing else, and still be 5'4". There could be another individual who's basically moderate, looks healthy, and is 5'4". And there will be another person who is very, very well built, big made, and they are also 5'4". So this presentation of the individual tells us that there is a dominance of a different set of characteristics in them, and therefore the approach to the individual has to be varied. So we do classify the Prakriti. I'm not going to go into details of this for lack of time, but just to say that we categorize the whole population into 7 subtypes based on the dominance of the doshas. If there is a dominance of a single dosha, we call it as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. If there is a combination of two, it can be Vata, Pitta, Pitta, Kapha, Kapha, Vata. Or when there is a balance of all the three, that is called as Sama Prakriti. So this is the general classification of the population into subtypes, and therefore the approach to each individual gets easier once we understand their Prakriti. And as Dr. Dharini was also saying, in the cases which we work, we definitely see that the approach, the individualized, personalized approach towards the Prakriti has a huge difference in how the person is able to handle the diet changes, or how easily they're able to adapt it, and the difference they can see, and so on. So very quickly, I'll just talk about a few characteristics of these specific Prakritis. So whenever we think about like a Kapha dominant Prakriti, there are many analogies which are given in Ayurveda. The easiest and the simplest one, which I feel we can correlate for Kapha, is that of an elephant, right? So when you think of an elephant, they are like slow walking, they're steady, they're calm, they're composed. And there is a saying, the elephant in the room. You definitely cannot miss the elephant in the room. That's exactly how a Kapha dominant Prakriti is. They really have a majestic presence in the room because they are extremely big made, and they're very calm, composed, wonderful people, easy, very friendly, pleasant, etc. But as we also know, an angry elephant is probably the most dangerous thing in the world. Similarly, a Kapha dominant Prakriti, they don't get angry so often, but when they do, it is very, very difficult to calm them down, right? And these people love their sweets. They tend to be very jovial, friendly, and you cannot push a Kapha Prakriti. So they are very slow in whatever they do. They will take their time in doing things, and that is the characteristic of the Kapha dominant Prakriti. Now, moving on to the second common characteristic, which is to do with Pitta, the analogy for this, which will help us correlate to it, is that of a firecracker. So, a firecracker cannot be soft, silent, slow, etc. That is not how they are. A firecracker is quick, is loud, is robust. That's exactly how the Pitta dominant Prakriti is. They are very, very intelligent. They have like a photographic memory. The minute they've read something, they'll never forget it ever. You may think that's a fantastic thing. Let me tell you, that's not true. I know people who have that, and they have memories from childhood of books which they have read, which probably I don't have. And that's where the issue comes. And also, when you talk about the Pitta Prakriti, they get very easily angry. So it can be a little difficult for people around them to handle them. They'll be like, they're so impatient. It is either their way or the highway. That's exactly how the Pitta Prakriti works. But they are very precise. Their digestion is just excellent in comparison to the Kapha Prakriti, who the characteristic statement is, I'm eating air and I'm putting on weight, because they hardly eat anything. They don't feel hungry at all, but they tend to put on weight. But the case of Pitta Prakriti, they are very, very like blessed in the sense that if you want to go for a buffet and want to do full paisa vasool, definitely take a Pitta Prakriti person, because they'll eat large quantities of food, digest it very quickly, and they be prepared for night dinner also. And then we have the last type of Prakriti. The analogy for that is the air, which is unpredictable. And that's exactly how the Vata dominant Prakritis are also. They are highly unpredictable, even with their digestive system. One day they can eat 10 puris, the next day the same person will hardly eat anything at all. So that changeability, irregularity is very dominant with Vata. They are very, very energetic people. If you want volunteers to do something and you ask a group of people, the people who jump up and will be like, yes, I want to do this, 100% an element of Vata in them. The Kapha would not even come forward. They'll be sitting at the back, right? So these changes in the characteristics in the presence of the appetite are all helpful for us to ascertain what kind of a Prakriti the person has. And once we understand that, it makes it easier for the approach. So how do we integrate this? For example, if there is a kapha dominant prakriti, then in our understanding, it would mean that probably they are more susceptible to diabetes, cardiac disease, respiratory infections, etc. And you need to give foods which are suited to them, which are drying in nature, because naturally they have a lot of oil in their system. So things such as barley, horse gram would be ideal. While over to you, doctor.
Yeah. So when we talk of obesity, what are we saying? They are heavy, their fat percent is high, the type of foods they eat are different, they're prone to diabetes. So that's why in pre-diabetes, we say you get the alarm of pre-diabetes. Even if you lose 3 to 4% of your weight, you can actually control your sugar at that time. But you need to maintain it and change your lifestyle so that you can not get into diabetes. Cardiac disease, of course, because once obesity comes, automatically your lipids are in trouble and you can get into cardiac problems. Your BP can be high. And the modern diet is a big, big problem because we get a lot of junk food. We get only simple carbohydrates and lot of fat, which is so easily available, and people are taking it in abundance. So there were some stories in my practice where with normal weight reduction, diet given after a 24 diet recall, I could not really crack and bring down their problems, like bring down their sugars, or if they had cardiac issues, or even as simple as weight. But when we integrated and we found out that certain foods are good for them, certain foods are not good for them, and tweak the diet to make it that way, it worked wonders. Yes. Next slide.
So just to ask you, how would you explain when you look at this plate of food? What do you see in it, or what do you consider it as a balanced meal or not?
Yes, because it's the my plate principle. Where quarter is grain and it's whole grain, idli there. There is dal, which is quarter is protein, and twice is vegetable, or quarter fruit plus quarter vegetable as it is depicted here. Most people don't want to take the fruit. They want to make it double vegetable. That's too, no problem. Have double quantity of the same vegetable, or if you can add another color, nothing like it. And of course, the superfood amla is there, which is one.
So, in our perspective, what I would add to this would be to say that yes, it has all the taste that we're looking for. So, for a healthy individual, this is a balanced meal because it contains all the six tastes, which are basically sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, as well as astringent. And therefore, when we combine it and the person is able to eat it, not only is it nutritious, but it is balancing all the three doshas. So to understand this concept better, we thought we'd like to take an example to explain this. Over to you.
Yeah. So let's go to the vada, which people love. Because everywhere I go, even yesterday, there was a discussion on vada has become a part of the diet. Idli with vada, pongal with vada, dosa with vada. There are families, when they make pongal and they don't have vada, they buy vada and take it. So that level vada is being used. But actually, it was a festival food. So we have to be full. So when we talk about the nutritive value of a medium-sized vada, a vada, whatever you want to say, 78 calories, 3.9 grams protein, and fat is 2.6. It's a fat item. Curd vada, we add the nutritive value of curd to the one. And rasam vada, we'll add the nutritive value of rasam to how much of a quantity we add. And that's how we calculate nutritive value. Next slide, please.
So when we look at vada, we would say that the plain madhu vada, which is made just with urad dal, is extremely difficult to digest. We actually have a term for it which says that if you have like a full madhu vada, it blocks your channels and keeps you full for a very long period of time, right? And it is definitely something which we would not give in diabetes, because it is something which will further imbalance the kapha dosha and the things which could cause diabetes. Now, if we add curd to it, I mean, contrary to popular belief, everyone believes that curd is something which helps in digestion. But in Ayurveda, I'm not saying it's not explained and it is not a good thing. Definitely not. I mean, in a South Indian population, we do have a lot of curd. But the thing is, it is something which is more difficult to digest. And it is something when you're adding it to that oil natured substance, it is even more heavy. So whenever someone invites you and is giving you like a dahi balla chaat or dahi with like, but it's basically curd with the vada, it's like trying to make you feel full very quickly so you don't eat the other foods. So jokes apart, the point is it becomes more heavy on digestion, and again, not something which we would give in diabetes. While rasa vada, because of the spices which you're adding in it and kind of the thin nature in which you're making it with the sour taste, etc., it makes it easier on digestion. So the rasam helps in the process of digestion. And even though the vada as such is contrary to diabetes, probably a better choice among the three if you wanted to make it in this way. So the processing method also definitely can change the effect or the experience that the food has on you. So just to further this, let's talk about the differences in dal and whether there's a difference in the calories and the effect that it has on our body.
In modern nutrition, we know black gram dal has this calorie, carbohydrate, protein, and green gram dal. So they're very similar. That's how we take it. And we don't mind giving this dal or that dal according to the dishes that we use. Yes.
So you would say in a food exchange list, both of these can ideally be interspersed. You can use either or. Is that right? So let's talk about what Ayurveda says. So in Ayurveda, we say the description is given in terms of the experience that the body has of these different ingredients. So urad dal, which we call as masha, is primarily, sorry for the Sanskrit terms, but I will translate and explain it. So the urad dal basically is sweet primarily in taste. It is unctuous as well as heavy on digestion. It is hot in thermal property and it has a sweet post-digestive taste, making it extremely heavy on digestion. While the moong dal is primarily astringent and sweet in taste. It is drying and extremely light on digestion. It has a cooling thermal property and something which has a pungent post-digestive taste. So in Ayurveda, there is a huge difference between the dal makhani which you have and a yellow moong dal, because the effect and the experience that it has on you is completely different. And we definitely say moong dal is something which a person can have practically daily without an issue, while the urad dal one needs to watch out for because it is heavier on digestion. So we've talked about health. Let's move on to disease. How do we understand disease in general when we look in Ayurveda? Here again, we talk about in terms of the dosha imbalances which we see in an individual and the symptoms based on which we classify them, which is how we started off the presentation, to say that we define the imbalances in the individual based on those different factors. And once we understand which dosha is involved, the medicine or the food which we give would be to balance that out. So how would we approach these imbalances is what we're going to be discussing through a few examples. Let's start off with the first one, which is to do with skin diseases. Over to you.
Today's skin disease is very common, even it starts in children. So what do? We feel that protein will help, and hence we give pulses and legumes. We give nuts because they have the right type of fats. If they're non-vegetarian, we add on the egg, chicken, so that they get more protein. Milk is given. Some people today take off the milk, but unless they have a to say that they are allergic to milk, it's better and prudent to take out milk. It's not necessary to remove milk and gluten in every person who has some skin issues. Protein supplements are also given in cases where they are not able to take the protein that is required for them, and vitamin C is concentrated upon because we feel there is a lot of antioxidants in it which will help the condition which is caused by some form of inflammation. So it will help in skin diseases. So we look at this. Of course, different skin diseases have different answers, but this is just general thing where all we first look at the protein, then include the nuts, and make sure everything is balanced in their diet. Yes.
Well, for us, definitely sour is a big no-no. So most people refrain from coming to Ayurveda specifically with skin diseases for this reason, because especially again in a South Indian diet, if we say no to curd and we say no to tamarind, then half their meals are completely gone. So the issue is we do see that when a person is able to restrict the sour things and use other souring agents in place of lemon, tamarind, etc., because these we have seen increase the inflammatory aspects of the skin conditions. And also something which is extremely spicy, like a pungent taste of chilies, or even something pepper is okay, jeera is okay, but definitely red and green chili we see definitely increases that. And combination foods, which we call as viruddha ahara, is a very, very relevant topic and a big one. But generally, combinations of milk and salt, like in white sauce, milk and sour. Nowadays, people have pomegranate milkshakes, strawberry milkshakes, apple milkshakes. All of these things, which is the combination of any fruit with milk, is definitely something which is going to affect the skin health, and also the combination of milk and fish. So we can combine these, not directly, because vitamin C can be given through other sources. You can see amla is not there. So amla as a vitamin source along with protein sources would probably be a good idea. But the kind of vitamin C, the souring agent which you use, would definitely have to be something which we watch out for. And the milk content which we're giving as protein, we do need to see that we're not combining it with things which can imbalance the doshas. The next one, let's move on to anemia.
I just have a question to Shri Priya. Is it with questions till 5 p.m. or is it our talk till 5 p.m.? Can you please clarify? Okay. While Shri Priya answers, we move to anemia. Yeah.
Ma'am, can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Yeah. Do we stop in 5 minutes for questions or can we talk till 5 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am. Just 5 minutes or 10 minutes for a question answer will be great.
Okay, great. Okay. So, Madhu, with this topic, we'll stop. Okay. We'll just go to the last two slides. Yeah. So, anemia is iron deficiency. We give iron with vitamin C for better absorption. B12 deficiency, we will give supplements if they are vegetarian, or if they take meat fiber, the fiber stays in the colon and actually bacteria can create B12. Obviously, they're not taking enough of that. So to immediately correct it, they'll take supplements. Then we'll change the diet so that they can not get into B12 deficiency again. And non-veg foods for the heme iron, folate, dal, supplements, all of this we give so that folate deficiency anemia doesn't happen.
So in Ayurveda, the way in which we look at anemia, the presentation can be different. Again, it's classified based on the doshas. So I will not go into the details of that again, because the presentations can vary, the approach will vary. But what I will definitely talk about are few examples and how exactly we could use them. So generally, we do see when we give like an iron supplement, people tend to develop a lot of gastritis, constipation, and issues in relationship to that. So people prefer to go for like more natural sources of iron supplementation. First of all, digestion is very, very important. This is something which we have found very, very convenient and useful for sharing with the dietitians who are working with clients, as well as in my practice also. I see that the major issue starts with the digestive disorders that a person has. So if you're able to correct that, any kind of medication or intervention which we do has a better impact. So we can use the combination of amla. So we did do a study in our university, and we did find that amla is something which allows better absorption of the iron itself, even from natural sources. So just having an amla a day for a person of anemia is very, very useful. Also, things like raisins would be something which I would use in a pitta dominant person who has constipation in association with amla. Pomegranate is something which I would use in a person who has a tendency of loose stools, probably. Drumstick in not a person who has a pitta dominance, but otherwise in a vata kapha dominant prakriti, drumsticks can be used. Lean meats, of course, across all prakritis, there's no problem with that. Milk also is a good option, but as is, it's a complete meal in itself, not in combination with iron, because as you would know, if you combine milk with any, like even jaggery, the calcium in that would not allow the iron to be absorbed. I think you would all know that better than me. And also ghee in general, because the fat content also helps in better absorption of the iron. So we will move on to the last aspect, as in what we are trying to integrate here.
Yeah, traditional medicine, whether it's Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, homeopathy, can be integrated with dietetic science. But because most of you are from Kerala, I think Ayurveda stands here, and that is what we have done, and it makes wonders. Can you go on? So thoughts that come from an average dietitian's mind, that any kind of traditional medicine is quackery and unscientific, which is not true. Can we move on? So what do we follow when we practice dietetics, clinical diet guidelines, ICMR, American or European or whatever guidelines we're using according to the notes that we hear? What do people say? Traditional medicines has no guidelines. They follow texts which are thousands of years old. This is what we listen all the time. Move on. Coconut oil was good sometime, then it became bad. Again, they're saying it's good. Then again, they'll say it's bad. So there's a lot of mutation that's happening. Move on. I'm going to talk about Dr. Shubhati, who was a very senior person she's the director of integrated nutrition at Ayurveda Medical Research Center, Kasturba Health Society. She was a professor of nutrition in SNDT College. She was the dean, she was the principal, and she is working, and she brought out a paper on coconut oil, of how important and how good it is for health. Can we move on? And she is both a hardcore researcher. She has guided many students, both MSc and PhD, and she is working in Ayurveda, and I think we have to learn that from her. Can we move on? Move on now. So what as dietitians are we doing? Giving keto diets to patients with liters of coconut oil? Can we move on? So studies at the university on ghee. She has dietetics professional. She works with an Ayurvedic professional, Dr. Narendra Pense. She brought out a research, and they came out with diet about ghee, how it should be done, when it helps, all of this. So there's no quackery here. That's what I'm trying to say. Move on. Here is Pushpa Soundarajan. She's a dietitian as part of AND, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And she has brought out a book on Ayurveda, not on her own. What? She works with an Ayurveda specialist in US. To the next slide, please. Gauri Junnakar is an Ayurveda specialist. Both of them work together. What I'm trying to say is, those who listen to this talk They want to do a certificate course on integration, and then they want to prescribe integrative diet. That should not be done. It should be, you should work with a professional, because we are not BAMS and they are not dietetics. We need to work together. Yeah, can we move on? There are a lot of certificate courses available, but by doing that, you cannot become an expert in Ayurvedic nutrition or integrated nutrition. Please be aware of that. Madhu will talk about Ayurvedic genomics, and we'll stop with that. Madhu, you're muted.
Even the concept of Prakriti, if we see, was a question that many people had. Is there something which is there in our genome? So there was a genome-wide analysis which was done to identify whether there was a correlation between Prakriti and genome. And surprisingly, they were able to classify. There were around 250 participants who were part of that study. And in the analysis, they were able to classify these 250 people into three major subsets. They have not, unfortunately, identified which characteristics were Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But the point being that the understanding of the classification of the population into these three major subtypes itself was telling us that there is some relationship between the concept of Prakriti and genomics. And that's where now I think Ayur genomics, and now people are even going into the framework of Ayur Nutri-genomics, where we can get food in relationship to the person's Prakriti in Ayurveda, by marrying the sciences together, is what we are looking for. So with that, we will end. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yes, we will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was an insightful session to get the aspect of Ayurvedic practices and its application in nutrition from a doctor's and a dietitian point of view. Thank you, Dharini ma'am and Madhumitha ma'am, for an eye-opening session for dietitians as we practice. So the session is open for questions. Actually, there are some questions in the chat box. Shall I read out?
No, I think I can read the first one. In anemia, amla, pomegranate, dates, juice, is it suggested in Ayurveda? Yes, in a person whose digestion is okay, we do give it in the form of a fresh juice, which is amla, which is in the form of a fresh juice, which is prepared, as well as pomegranate. You can also have it in the cooked form in case a person is not able to handle the fiber or digest it in the raw form. Then we can cook it and give, but it is prescribed in the raw form originally. I think the next question is also directed at me. Shall I answer that? Yeah. What determines thermal nature of food? Like some people classify certain foods as heaty or certain as cooling. Is there any scientific literature or list on this? So there was an interesting study which was done in 1970. I don't have the exact the person who did the research, but this was a question obviously which was inherently asked so many years ago as to what is this concept of hot versus cold. And there they did not follow the classical explanations which are given, but definitely what they did try to understand was whether there was an issue in relationship to a change. They saw that there was a change in the pH of the urine. There was a change in the amount of a specific protein which was formed inside the body, and the people also who were consuming it by experience said that we were feeling burning sensation, we were feeling discomfort, and so on. So this concept that it's more experiential, and unfortunately, presently, I would say they are trying to get there, where they're trying to get a technologically advanced methodology through which we can identify how exactly we classify as hot or cold. But definitely experience wise, I think all of us, when we talk to patients, we can understand when someone has a sesame or a drumstick versus a coconut water. You ask them how you feel. There will be someone who says, oh, I feel this, that it's extremely heaty, while this is cooling in nature.
Yeah, I just showed while she was talking the book, and there are 2 volumes of that. And there are many books which have come out by different university. One is transdisciplinary university. Then I think most of the questions are to you, Mother. If we have a couple of minutes, we can take it. A fruit milkshake with soy or badam too having the same effect as cow's milk.
First of all, about Viruddha Ahara, it's a very big topic. There are 18 subtypes of it, so I will not get into that for obvious reasons. But coming to the milkshake with soy or badam milk in comparison to cow's milk, that would not be considered Viruddha. See, there is no concept of veganism or any concept of plant-based foods in Ayurveda. So because it was a more of a holistic, wholesome approach which used foods which were available at that time. So actually soy milk, almond milk are not explained in that form. Coconut milk, of course, was there for specific recipes, etc. It does become heavier on digestion when you make those sources. And is it equivalent to cow's milk? Definitely not. But it is not Viruddha. It is not something which we would come under the opposing category.
Yeah. Shri Priya ma'am, you want to close? It's 5 p.m. Ma'am, we can't hear you. You're muted.
I'm sorry, ma'am. If you're busy, it is okay. Otherwise, if you
Huh?
can answer the question, that will be
Hi.
good, ma'am.
That's
Another
fine.
5 or 10 minutes.
Hopefully,
Okay, fine.
hopefully.
Somebody's got their this thing on. Okay.
Huh?
Would you like to take the one on vitamin C and iron?
Yeah, vitamin C and iron help actually. I don't know how you're saying the other way. There is a lot of thing to say that iron absorption is better with vitamin C. And if it's taken between meals, because our meals have phytates and oxalate, it's always between meals, it's better. That's how Amla with this thing, they have also tried with their this thing, which has helped. So both are research and that shows that. Okay.
Can uncontrolled diabetes be treated with Ayurveda? It would depend on how long the person has had it and what status is there of the individual. There are almost 10 factors which we need to assess in the individual before I can, because it's a very individualistic approach, before I have an answer for that. But diabetes in the initial phases can be treated with Ayurveda. Uncontrolled, we will have to see other factors also which come into play. But there are answers for specific presentations in the individual to be helped through Ayurveda.
There's a question to you. Should we restrict citrus fruits and banana during respiratory infections, particularly in children?
Ideally, yes, we do ask them to restrict that because those come under the categories of things which can increase kapha, and most respiratory issues in children particularly present with an increase of kapha, and that's why we restrict that. Even in asthma, we do see that it is something which increases, the wheezing, etc. when the person has those things, even milk and milk products for that matter. But I understand many children tend to have cold and cough for a pretty long time. So does that mean that we have to completely give up on the citrus fruits and banana? Not at all. What you can do is during the day when the sun is there, you can give it before 6 p.m. And if you can add a little bit of pepper or salt to that and give it to them, that will make it less kaphakara as compared to if, you give it just as is.
Ma'am,
The
a question
question on
regarding seed cycling. Sorry. Seed
Yeah.
cycling.
Yeah. See, seed cycling, that is totally off this topic because I've done a lot of work on organic farming, work with Dr. Ismail, Dr. Sultan Ahmad Ismail. And if we do only the same plant again and again, it will take all the nutrients and the soil will get depleted. That's why the traditional method itself is to have a legume or have groundnuts, which actually fix nitrogen into the soil and rice or millets on that soil so that it will enrich and give you all the nutrients. So this is the main thing about seed cycling. But the problem is traditional seeds should be used, not GM seeds, because genetically modified creates a lot of problems We have seen a lot of research which is affecting in animals, also in human. It's a lobby against the world, so we cannot do much about it. But as long as possible, please try to avoid GM foods. They have lot of harm. Yes,
I think
you
they
can take
meant in
over.
relationship to PCOS, as in seed cycling, they say to have flax seeds and sesame seeds in the,
Oh,
I think,
sorry.
initial part. Yeah, and
Okay, I
then
didn't
the
see the
combination of
question.
pumpkin seeds and something else later. So that actually, if you would like to add your perspective on that, please do. But I'll just give the Ayurveda perspective to that. So generally, PCOS, we do see that there is a issue with what we call as the Agneya aspect or the heat generation in the body, which is responsible for ovulation. So to promote ovulation in the initial part of the cycle, we do suggest the person to take sesame, because that in the either the oil or seed form, because that helps in the ovulatory process. And post that, you need to have more of an estrogen rich one to help in the development of the endometrium before menstrual cycle sets off. So that's how the process of hot versus cold is used in our theory there. If you would please like to add your perspective on that, please do.
Yeah, people with PCOS mainly, if you take 90% or more, are. So if you reduce the weight itself, it helps first. But the PCOS, they give metformin straight away. So a diabetic diet is what we follow because they need to control so many things. But lot of people are removing milk and gluten from their diet, which is not so necessary in our time. Because if you take a vegetarian diet, it plays a very important role because of the bioavailable calcium and the good quality protein. But if they are allergic, yes, it makes sense to remove. But otherwise, to remove all gluten is not necessary because, especially if they are from the north, if you remove the full cars, the stress caused by removing that is far higher than the problem that comes from taking gluten. And sensitive, of course, it's a totally different dish. And in India, to remove gluten is not difficult at all because we have many, many grains. And I think in the International Year of Millets, lot of us have understood so many millets which are available. I just want to say one thing here, because everybody cannot digest all the millets, and to have millets every day, it depends on person and digestion, which Mark will tell you. But you have to either roast or sprout or ferment the millets to avoid the heterogenic factors. So it's very, very important whether you use processed millets, you have to roast it and then use it to make like rice, whatever you're making, or if you're fermenting it in some form, like you use it like making an idli dosa batter at home, it's fine. They're fermented. Only the whole millets can be sprouted. So only those you get that. But you need to do that, please watch out. Yes.
So coming to the millet question, my perspective on that. So yes, the millet depends on the season. I don't think generally when we talk about the year of millets, everyone was shifting to that, and not many people were thinking about the effect that it could have. So ideally, bajra is something which is generally had in the winter because it's much hotter in nature, while something like jawar or ragi is had during the summer season because it's naturally more cooling in nature. And of course, as Dr. Dharni said, it is very important to process it. And we see that a person who suddenly changes over to millets naturally develops a lot of gastric issues, especially related to distension, difficulty in digestion, and so on. That's because millets are more fibrous and more heavy on digestion. So you cannot not have the fat with it. You need to add the ghee, you need to have the oil. When you take a bhajra roti, you see this lump of ghee on it. There's an importance for that because that's the part that's going to help you balance out the vata, which can get imbalanced if you don't add that.
There's a question, does the kind of food eaten by mother in the first 3 months of lactation affect the stool of the breastfed baby? You can say that.
Absolutely. So, in Ayurveda, we firmly believe that the digestion of the mother or how well her digestion is working directly influence the stanya or the breast milk production. So, we've had very interesting cases where when we were describing this, people were saying, "Oh, I had urad dal and I saw my baby passing it and I got a shock of my life as to how that was happening." Or if I had green colored palak or orange colored carrot, then my baby was passing those stools even though the baby was not having that. Or some people even claim that I ate the garlic and my baby was smelling of garlic. So definitely the essence of the food which you're eating is going to the baby. So it's important what you're eating. We ideally have a patyam or a diet which has to be followed, not to cut out nutrients, but to rather help your digestive process handle all of these things and also protect the newborn baby.
Next is, can an obese person use honey instead of sugar?
Yes, because it is kapha dominant, you can, but honey should not be mixed with hot substances. So watch with care because that comes under Viruddha. So honey as such with lukewarm water is okay, but hot tea or hot milk with honey is not an ideal situation at all. So probably you can reduce that or change the form of sugar which you're using rather than probably just trying to blanket statement replace sugar with honey.
Can you balance estrogen and progesterone hormones in Ayurveda through foods?
We do not have a concept of hormones in Ayurveda. Depending upon the symptomatic presentation and the disease condition, we do have foods which I believe can balance the hormones. But can I say sesame is estrogenic and something is progesterone balancing? Not at all. That's not the way in which we look at the individual at all.
Millets are preferred in diabetes, so can they have it with ghee or oil? Even in modern dietetics, we say that the 3 teaspoons per day, one can be sesame oil or mustard oil, depending on which state you come from. The second one can be brown up or higher, like rice bran or sunflower oil. And the third can be ghee. So there's no problem. We don't say diabetes means no ghee. Even in modern, but yeah. Can add?
Yeah, so same concept here. In a diabetic patient, depending upon whether they're a lean diabetic or an obese diabetic, also you would have to change it. But ideally, considering that millets would probably be given in an obese diabetic, sesame oil or mustard oil would be the preference. Ghee can also be given. 1 teaspoon per day is not going to increase the cholesterol or the weight too much. It actually has a more positive benefit on the body.
I think we have covered all the questions. If I have not, please
Yes,
do
ma'am.
say because I skipped, I think, some.
Ma'am, that was a nice session. I have only one doubt. How about having green leafy vegetable with the non-vegetarian food? Is there an impact?
If you mean in the Viruddha concept, we do not directly say that, but the concept is very simple that meats in general are heavy on digestion. So if you are going to add green leafy vegetables, which could also, not all of them, but some of them are also heaty, which is similar to the meat. So if you combine too much of that, continuously it could be an issue. Even Viruddha Ahara, they do not say that once in a way you cannot have it. If you're going to have it every day, continuously, that's when it becomes an issue.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Can we close the session if you don't mind?
I think,
Actually,
yes, Ash.
okay. Actually, we can conclude the session. We have answered all the questions in the chat box. Now I welcome Sonia K. Joseph, the Joint Secretary, CNF, for conveying vote of thanks.
Thank you,
Over to
Sia.
you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So as we come to the end of this Diet-O-Pedia session on integrated dietetics, it's my privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to all those who have made this occasion a success. So first and foremost, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Dr. Dharini ma'am and Dr. Madhumitha ma'am, for your insightful presentation that has provided us with a wealth of knowledge and deeper understanding of the critical role of dietetics and Ayurveda that plays in our health and well-being. So thank you for your great talk and your expertise and dedication to the field of to this field are truly inspiring to all of us dietitians. Thank you, ma'am. So to our session, to the organizers, thank you for your tireless efforts in planning and executing this event. So thank you for the organizers and the CNF executive members. And to all the attendees, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We hope everyone found the sessions as informative and inspiring. So once again, thanking you all for the part of this session, and we look forward for seeing you in all the coming future sessions also. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone.